Is this Eleanor Caldwell? I found your bag. There's a lot of money in it.
The voice trembled. Not someone powerful, a mother about to lose her home.
That's everything I have. My daughter and I lose the house without it. Please, I beg you.
Brianna stared at the passenger seat. $200,000. $14 in her account. Her car was her bedroom. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. Take the bag. Her life changes tonight. Return it? She starves. She looked at the money for a long time. Then she said,
Tell me where to take it.
The woman on the other end cried. 48 hours later, a limousine pulled up at that gas station. A man in a $3,000 suit stepped out and asked for Brianna Foster. She thought she was being arrested. She wasn't. It was only the beginning. Let's rewind a little bit. Before the phone call, before the briefcase, before any of it. Because if you're going to understand what Brianna Foster did that night, and I mean really understand it, you need to know who she was before she found that bag. Brianna was 22. She slept in the back seat of a 2009 Honda Civic with a blanket she'd folded the same way every morning for 5 months. Not because she was organized, because it was the only thing in her life she could control. Every morning, same routine. Wake up before sunrise, fold the blanket, brush her teeth with bottled water in a gas station bathroom, change into her cleanest shirt, and she always had one, always, because she ironed it the night before using the flat side of a hot water bottle. Then she'd check her phone. No missed calls, no emails, no one looking for her. She worked temp jobs, data entry mostly, $12 an hour. No benefits, no guarantees. Some weeks she got 3 shifts. Some weeks she got none. She kept a small notebook in her glove compartment. Inside, over 40 job applications. Names, dates, positions. Cashier, warehouse assistant, office clerk, hotel front desk, dog walker, anything. Most of them never called back. She kept applying anyway. Brianna grew up without a family. No safety net. No backup plan. No one to call when the car broke down or the temp agency said they didn't need her this week. She figured things out on her own because she had to, not because she wanted to. And she never once complained about it. Not to anyone. Not even to herself. And here's the thing. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't angry at the world. She was just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. But she still folded that blanket every morning. The day after she found the briefcase, Brianna drove to the local police precinct. She walked in carrying a leather bag with $200,000 in it, set it on the counter, told the officer behind the desk, a guy named Dale Brennan, mid-40s, coffee stain on his shirt, that she'd found it at a gas station and wanted to turn it in. Brennan barely looked up. Nobody's filed a missing property report for a briefcase. Well, someone lost it. There's a lot of cash inside. He glanced at the bag, then at her, up and down. The kind of look she'd gotten her whole life. The kind that said, I already know your story. Leave it here. We'll log it. Can I get a receipt? He laughed. Not mean exactly. Just the laugh of a man who couldn't imagine why a girl like her would need a receipt for something like this. He scribbled something on a sticky note, handed it over. Brianna looked at it, looked at him, looked at the bag. Something about his attitude, too careless, too quick, made her uneasy. She picked the bag back up. I'll hold on to it until the owner comes. Brennan shrugged. He'd already forgotten about her before she reached the door. That sticky note? She put it in her glove compartment, next to the notebook. Because later, That scrap of paper will matter more than anyone in that precinct thinks. That evening, Brianna drove to a community shelter on the west side. Not to sleep. She never slept there. She went to help in the kitchen sometimes, and in return, she got a hot meal. But mostly she went because of Phyllis. Phyllis Greer was 62, retired school teacher, ran the shelter kitchen like it was her living room. Everyone was welcome, nobody was rushed, and the soup was never watered down. Phyllis was the closest thing Brianna had to family. Not because of some big dramatic story, just because Phyllis showed up every day. Same kitchen, same apron, same warm voice. Brianna told her about the briefcase, about the money, about the phone call she'd made the night before. Phyllis listened, didn't interrupt, didn't tell her what to do. When Brianna finished, Phyllis wiped her hands on her apron and said, "You already know what's right, baby. You knew it last night in that car." Brianna sat there for a moment. Then she pulled out her phone and called Eleanor Caldwell again. This time, Eleanor picked up on the first ring. Her voice was barely a whisper. And what she said next changed everything. Eleanor's voice came through the phone like it was running out of air. "My ex-husband left 2 years ago. He left me with everything. The debt, the mortgage, the lies, all of it in my name. The bank gave me a deadline, 2 days. If I don't pay, they take the house." Brianna didn't say anything. She just listened. "I sold my mother's house, the only thing she left me. I got $200,000 in cash because the buyer wanted it done fast, and I couldn't wait for a wire transfer. I was driving to the bank to pay it off before the deadline. And then the rain. And I lost it. I lost the bag." Her voice broke. "My daughter is 15. Her name is Lily. She's asleep upstairs right now. She doesn't know any of this. She doesn't know that tomorrow morning someone might come and tell us this isn't our home anymore." Brianna looked at the briefcase on the passenger seat. $200,000. A mother's last chance to keep a roof over her daughter's head. "Where are you right now?" Brianna asked. "Home, sitting on the kitchen floor. I've been here since I lost the bag. I can't move." Brianna turned the key. The Honda coughed twice, then started. "Stay there, I'm coming." She drove 40 minutes across the city in the rain with a bag full of money that wasn't hers, to a house she'd never seen, for a woman she'd never met. When Brianna pulled up, the house was dark, except for one light in the kitchen. A small house, white paint peeling off the porch, a bicycle leaning against the front steps. This was what $200,000 was protecting. Not a mansion, just a home. She knocked. The door opened. And there was Eleanor Caldwell, 28 years old, still in the clothes she'd been wearing when she lost the bag. Mascara streaked down her face, hands shaking. Brianna held out the briefcase. Didn't say anything, just held it out. Eleanor didn't take it right away. She just stared at it, like she couldn't believe it was real. Then she grabbed it and held it against her chest and cried. Not quiet tears, the kind of crying that sounds like it's been locked inside someone for weeks. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." That's all she could say, over and over. But here's the part that matters. Brianna didn't leave. She looked at Eleanor, this woman sitting on her kitchen floor, shaking, dark circles under her eyes, barely holding it together. And she sat down, right there, on the cold tile, next to a stranger. Eleanor told her everything. That she hadn't slept in 3 nights. That she'd called everyone she knew to borrow money. No one helped. that she had a grandfather with more money than most people could imagine, but she hadn't spoken to him in 6 years. Pride, old wounds, a funeral he showed up too late for. And now she was about to lose the one place her daughter called home. Brianna listened. She didn't give advice. She didn't ask questions. She didn't say, "It's going to be okay." She just sat there, on the floor, in silence. Two women who didn't know each other, breathing in the same dark kitchen. At some point, Eleanor whispered, "Why are you still here?" Brianna thought about it, then said, "Because nobody should sit on a floor alone at midnight." It was after 2 a.m. when Eleanor finally fell asleep. Right there on the floor, her head tilted against the cabinet. Brianna didn't wake her. She found a blanket on the couch, draped it over Eleanor's shoulders, and sat back down. She hadn't eaten in over 30 hours. Her gas tank was almost empty. She had $14 and no place to sleep except a car that barely started. And she was sitting on a stranger's kitchen floor at 2 in the morning, making sure that stranger was okay. At 8 a.m., Brianna drove Eleanor to the bank. Eleanor's hands were still shaking when she walked through the front door. Brianna sat in the parking lot, engine off, windows down. She waited. Didn't leave until Eleanor walked out with the receipt in her hand. The house was saved. Lily would never know how close she came to losing it. A girl with no home saved someone else's home, and she never once asked for a single thing in return. 48 hours later, Brianna was asleep in the back seat of her Honda when a knock on the window woke her up. She opened her eyes. A black Lincoln Town Car was parked next to her. A man in a dark suit stood outside her door. Mid-30s, clean-shaven, hands folded in front of him, like he'd been trained to stand that way. "Are you Brianna Foster?" She didn't move. Her hand went to the door lock. "My name is Thomas Wren. I work for Harrison Caldwell. His granddaughter Eleanor asked him to find you." Brianna stared at him. "Find me for what?" Thomas pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. Eleanor sitting in a kitchen holding Lily. Then another photo. An older man with sharp eyes and a silver cane, standing in front of a building with his name on it. "Mr. Caldwell would like to meet you, to say thank you, and to understand why you did what you did." Brianna looked at the photo, then at the Lincoln, then at her own car. Cracked windshield, duct tape on the side mirror, a blanket balled up in the back seat. "I didn't do anything special." "Ma'am, you returned $200,000. She sat there for a long time. Then she unlocked the door. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she wasn't afraid. The drive took 35 minutes. They left the south side, the check-cashing places and laundromats and gas stations Brianna knew by heart, and entered a part of the city she'd only seen through a bus window. Tree-lined streets, stone walls, gates. Thomas turned into a long driveway. Iron gate, security camera, hedges trimmed like someone measured them with a ruler. The house at the end of the driveway wasn't a house. It was a statement. Brianna didn't say wow. She pulled at the hem of her shirt, looked down at her shoes, tucked a loose thread into her sleeve. Thomas opened her door. She stepped out onto a gravel path that probably cost more than her car. Inside, the house smelled like old wood and fresh coffee. A woman in a gray uniform took her jacket, then hesitated, like she wasn't sure if it was a jacket or something Brianna needed back. Brianna noticed. She always noticed things like that. Harrison Caldwell was waiting in his study. 71 years old, silver hair, a cane he leaned on but didn't need. He stood when she walked in, not out of politeness, Brianna thought, out of curiosity, like he wanted to see her clearly. He didn't smile, didn't shake her hand, just looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "You had $200,000 in your hands. Nobody was watching. Why did you give it back?" Brianna didn't flinch. "Because it wasn't mine." Harrison tilted his head. "Eleanor told me you drove to her house at midnight. You sat with her until morning. You took her to the bank. You hadn't eaten all day." "That's right." "Why?" Brianna thought about it. Not because she didn't know the answer, because she'd never had to explain it before. She was alone. She needed someone to be there. I was there. That's it. Harrison studied her for a long time. The room was quiet. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked. Then he nodded. Once. Slowly. Like something had just been confirmed that he'd been hoping was true. "Sit down, Miss Foster. I'd like to tell you about my granddaughter. And then I'd like to offer you something. But not what you think." Harrison didn't rush. He poured 2 cups of coffee, handed one to Brianna without asking if she wanted it, and sat down across from her. Then he told her about Eleanor. "My granddaughter and I haven't spoken in 6 years. He said it the way you'd say the weather was cold. Flat. Practiced. Like he'd told himself this fact so many times it had stopped hurting. Almost. Eleanor's mother, my daughter, Catherine, died 3 years ago. Cancer. It was slow. Eleanor was with her every day for the last 4 months. Sleeping in hospital chairs, feeding her through a straw, doing everything." He paused. "I was in London when Catherine died. Business meeting. I got on a plane as soon as I heard. But I didn't make it in time for the funeral. I was 6 hours late." He looked at his coffee. Didn't drink it. "Eleanor never forgave me for that. And I don't blame her." Brianna didn't say anything. She just held her cup. Harrison continued. "After Catherine's death, Eleanor married a man named Scott. Harrison didn't approve. Said the man had no foundation, no direction. Eleanor told him to stay out of her life, and he did. 2 years later, Scott left. Walked out on Eleanor and Lily without a word. Left behind a mountain of debt, credit cards, a second mortgage, personal loans, all in Eleanor's name. She was trapped. "She could have called me," Harrison said. "I would have paid every cent." But she didn't call, because she's proud, because she's still angry, because asking me for help would mean admitting I was right about Scott, and she couldn't do that. So Eleanor sold her mother's house, the last thing Catherine left her, turned it into cash, and tried to save her home by herself. And then she lost the bag. "And then you found it," Harrison said. He looked at Brianna. A stranger. A girl sleeping in her car with $14 to her name. And you gave it back. You drove to her house. You sat with her. You took her to the bank. His voice was steady, but his hands weren't. "A stranger on the street did what I, with all my money, failed to do. You were there for her." The room went quiet again. Harrison looked out the window. For a moment, he wasn't a billionaire in a study. He was a grandfather who missed a funeral and lost his granddaughter because of it. Brianna saw it. She recognized that kind of regret, the kind that lives in your chest and never moves. Then Harrison straightened up. Back to business. I'd like to offer you a position at Caldwell Group. Entry-level operations. It's real work, not a title, not a favor. There's a salary and a housing stipend. You'd start Monday. Brianna put her cup down. Why? Because I need people with integrity more than I need people with degrees. She shook her head. I don't want a handout. Good, because I'm not offering one. They looked at each other. Two people from completely different worlds sitting 3 feet apart, understanding each other perfectly. Monday, Brianna said. Harrison nodded. Monday. Monday came. Brianna moved into a small studio apartment the company kept for visiting consultants. 4th floor, clean sheets, a window that opened. She stood in the doorway for a full minute before she walked in. It was the first time she'd had an address in 5 months. She sat on the edge of the bed that night and did something she hadn't done in a long time. She cried. Not sad tears, not happy tears, just the tears of someone who finally had a door she could close behind her. She went shopping at a thrift store on Elm Street. 2 blouses, 1 pair of slacks, a pair of shoes that almost fit. Thomas had left an envelope on her kitchen counter, a clothing allowance from the company. She didn't open it. She put it in a drawer. Her first day at Caldwell Group was exactly what you'd expect. Glass building, marble lobby, people walking fast, talking in acronyms, holding coffee cups that cost more than her lunch. She showed up 40 minutes early, sat in the break room alone until someone told her where her desk was. She was good at the work, detail-oriented, fast learner, the kind of person who reads the manual before asking questions. Her supervisor noticed. The other interns didn't. But Brianna didn't care about fitting in. She cared about doing the job right. She ate lunch alone at her desk, a sandwich from the deli across the street. She kept the receipt. She kept every receipt now. Every dollar accounted for. Old habits from a life where $14 meant the difference between eating and not eating. After her first week, she drove to Eleanor's house. Eleanor opened the door and hugged her. The kind of hug that says more than a conversation could. She invited Brianna inside, made tea. They sat at the kitchen table and talked about nothing important. The weather, the neighborhood, a TV show Eleanor had been watching. And then Lily came downstairs, 15 years old, dark hair pulled back, earbuds around her neck. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked at Brianna the way teenagers look at anyone new, suspicious, unimpressed, waiting to be convinced. Lily, this is Brianna. She's the one who— I know who she is, Lily said. Not rude, just direct. She sat down at the kitchen table with a textbook and a calculator. Algebra. She was stuck on something. Brianna could tell by the way she kept erasing the same line. Need help? Brianna asked. Lily looked at her, sizing her up, then slid the notebook across the table. They sat there for an hour. Brianna didn't tutor her, she just worked through the problems alongside her. When Lily got one right, Brianna didn't say, "Good job." She just moved to the next one. Lily respected that. When Brianna left that night, Lily said, "Are you coming back?" "If that's okay." "Whatever." But she almost smiled. Eleanor watched from the kitchen doorway. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. 2 people who were 7 years apart, not quite friends, not quite sisters, but something in between that didn't have a name yet. And in the background, Someone else was watching too. Derek Ashton, Harrison's senior aide, 20 years at the company, saw Brianna's name on the new hire list. He asked his assistant, "Who is she? Who authorized the hire? Why did Mr. Caldwell personally sign off on an entry-level position?" Nobody gave him an answer. Derek didn't like things he couldn't explain, and it didn't add up. The next 2 weeks were the quietest Brianna had known in years. She showed up early. She left on time. She did her work without complaint and without trying to impress anyone. Her supervisor started giving her more files. She didn't ask why. She just did them. Every evening, she called Phyllis. "How was today, baby?" "Good. Normal." "Normal is good." They'd talk for a few minutes, never about anything important, just checking in, and it was good. For the first time in 5 months, Brianna had a routine that didn't involve survival. She had a desk, a paycheck, a door that locked. She still couldn't quite believe it. Some mornings she woke up and reached for the blanket in the back seat before remembering she was in a bed. After work, she drove to Eleanor's house. Not every day, but most days. It became a rhythm. Eleanor would make tea. Brianna would sit at the kitchen table, and Lily would come downstairs with her textbook. It changed slowly. The first week, Lily barely talked. The second week, she started asking questions. Not just about math, about Brianna's job, about the city, about what it was like to live alone. Brianna answered everything the same way she did everything. Simply, without performance. One evening, Lily laughed at something Brianna said. A real laugh, not the careful kind teenagers use around adults. Eleanor was standing in the kitchen doorway. She put her hand over her mouth and turned away. It was the first time she'd seen her daughter laugh like that in months. Brianna kept the old notebook in her desk drawer at Caldwell Group. Over 40 applications. Over 40 silences. She never opened it. But she never threw it away either. And something else was happening. Something Brianna didn't plan and didn't even notice. Harrison started calling Eleanor once a week. The first time, Eleanor didn't pick up. The second time, she answered but didn't speak. The third time, she said, "Lily wants to know if you like chocolate cake." Harrison didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, "Tell her yes." A girl with no family was quietly stitching someone else's family back together. And she had no idea she was doing it. Derek Ashton had worked for Harrison Caldwell for 20 years. He'd seen people try to get close to the old man before. Entrepreneurs with fake smiles, distant relatives with sudden affection, charity cases designed to tug at heartstrings. He'd watched them all come and go, and he'd been right about every single one. So when a homeless girl showed up out of nowhere, returned a bag full of cash, and suddenly had a desk at Caldwell Group, Derek didn't see a miracle. He saw a pattern. He didn't hate Brianna. He didn't know her. But he knew the world, and in his world, nobody gives back $200,000 without wanting something bigger in return. It wasn't personal. Derek had a job. Protect the chairman. Protect the company. That's what he'd done for 2 decades, and he was good at it. He'd caught fraud before, a consultant who padded invoices, a vendor who didn't exist. He had instincts, and right now those instincts were going off. He started asking questions, quietly, the way you do when you've been in a company long enough to know where the filing cabinets are. First, he pulled her employment file. No degree. No references, no prior corporate experience. Hired on the direct authorization of Harrison Caldwell. No interview. No HR screening. Then he called the police precinct. Officer Dale Brennan answered. Derek asked about the briefcase incident. Brennan pulled up the file, and what was in it made Derek sit up straight. The report didn't say Brianna Foster turned in a briefcase. It said, individual presented at precinct in possession of leather bag containing large sum of cash. That was it. No mention of returning anything. No mention of a phone call to Eleanor Caldwell. No context. Was there a receipt? Derek asked. I don't recall one, Brennan said. Derek hung up. He had what he needed. He didn't go to Harrison first. He went to two board members, Patricia Coleman and Richard Graves, and the company's legal counsel. He laid out the facts, not accusations, facts. A woman with no address and no background was found in possession of a bag containing $200,000 in cash. The police report makes no mention of her voluntarily returning it. There is no receipt. There is no independent verification of her story. She was subsequently hired, without process, by the chairman himself. I'm not saying she's lying, Derek said. I'm saying we have a responsibility to verify. He believed every word he was saying. That was the dangerous part. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. Brianna was called to the fourth-floor conference room at 2 p.m. She thought it was a project briefing. When she walked in, she saw Derek sitting at the head of the table. Two people she didn't recognize on either side. A woman in a gray blazer, legal counsel, with a folder open in front of her. No one smiled. Ms. Foster, please sit down. Derek spoke first, calm, measured, almost gentle, the way someone talks when they've already decided the outcome and want to seem fair about it. He laid out the police report, read the language aloud, pointed out the absence of any documented voluntary return, mentioned the lack of receipt, noted that her hiring had bypassed every standard HR procedure. We're not making accusations, he said. We're asking questions that need answers. Brianna sat there. Her hands were flat on the table. She didn't move. I went to the police station to turn it in, she said. The officer didn't take it seriously. He wrote something on a sticky note. I kept it. Do you have it? She thought of the glove compartment, the sticky note next to the notebook. Yes, in my car. Unfortunately, a sticky note isn't an official record, Ms. Foster. She looked at Derek, then at the two board members, then at the lawyer. None of them looked back. I called Eleanor Caldwell that night. I drove to her house. I took her to the bank. She'll tell you. Miss Caldwell is a family member of the chairman. Her testimony is not considered independent. The room was quiet. The kind of quiet that has already made its decision. The board voted to suspend her pending a formal review. Effective immediately. Her badge was collected. She stood up. The security guard, a young guy, maybe 25, held the door open for her. He looked embarrassed. She didn't hold it against him. He was doing his job. Just like Derek. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She walked out the same way she'd walked in 3 weeks ago. Straight back, eyes forward. But when she got to the parking lot and saw her Honda sitting there, the same car she'd slept in, the same cracked windshield, the same duct tape mirror, something inside her broke. She sat in the driver's seat, closed the door, and called Phyllis. This time she didn't say, "Good, normal." This time she cried. The kind of crying she never let anyone see. the kind she saved for closed doors and empty cars. Phyllis listened, didn't interrupt, waited until Brianna ran out of breath. Then she said, "Baby, the truth doesn't disappear just because someone hides it. It's patient." Brianna wiped her face. She stared at the building through the windshield. 3 weeks ago, she'd walked into that lobby with a thrift store blouse and a feeling she couldn't name. Now she was sitting in a parking lot, right back where she started. She thought about the studio apartment, the clean sheets, the door that locked. All of it was tied to the job. No job meant no apartment. No apartment meant back to the car, back to the gas station, back to $14 and a blanket in the back seat. 3 weeks of normal, gone, like it had never been real. She almost drove away, almost pointed the Honda toward the highway and kept going. No one would have blamed her. But then her phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Are you coming today? I'm stuck on chapter 6. Brianna stared at the screen. She couldn't go. She wasn't allowed in the building, and showing up at Eleanor's house like this, suspended, accused, falling apart, felt like bringing a storm into someone else's living room. She typed back, "Not today. Sorry." Then she put the phone down. And that was the part that hurt the most. Not losing the job, not the accusation, not the security guard or the conference room or Derek's calm, measured voice. It was the thought of Lily sitting at that kitchen table, waiting for someone who wasn't coming, and not understanding why. That evening, Lily came downstairs at 4:30, like she always did. Textbook under her arm, calculator in her hand. She sat at the kitchen table and opened to chapter 6. Then she looked at the empty chair across from her. "Is Bree coming today?" Eleanor was standing at the counter. She didn't answer right away. She'd gotten Brianna's text an hour ago. "Not today. Sorry." And something about it didn't feel right. Brianna never canceled. Not once in 3 weeks. She called Brianna. It rang 5 times before she picked up. "Hey." Brianna's voice was flat, empty. "What happened?" Brianna told her. The conference room, Derek, the police report, the suspension, all of it. Eleanor didn't speak for a long time. She stood in her kitchen, the same kitchen where Brianna had sat on the floor at 2 a.m., the same kitchen where Lily laughed for the first time in months, and felt something shift inside her. She'd spent 6 years being angry at Harrison, 6 years of silence, 6 years of refusing to ask for help because asking meant admitting she needed him, and needing him meant forgiving him. And she wasn't ready for that. But this wasn't about her anymore. A girl who had nothing had given Eleanor everything. Her money back, her home, her daughter's smile. And now that girl was being called a liar by people in suits who'd never sat on anyone's kitchen floor at midnight. Eleanor picked up the phone again. Not to call Brianna, to call Harrison. It rang twice. He picked up immediately, like he'd been waiting. Maybe he had been, for 6 years. "Grandpa, I need to tell you something about the woman who saved our home." Harrison listened. He didn't interrupt. When Eleanor finished, the line was quiet for 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then he said, "Come to the office. Tomorrow morning. Bring everything you have." Eleanor arrived at Caldwell Group at 9 a.m. the next day. She didn't bring a lawyer. She didn't bring documents or files or a presentation. She brought her phone. Harrison was in his study. He looked like he hadn't slept. He probably hadn't. Eleanor sat down across from him. The first time she'd been in this room in 6 years. She placed her phone on the desk. "This is the voicemail Brianna left me the night she found the bag." She pressed play. Brianna's voice filled the room. Quiet. Steady. "I found something that belongs to you. I'll keep it safe." The timestamp, 11:48 p.m. 2 hours before Eleanor reported the bag missing to anyone. Here's her GPS history from that night. Her phone was at the gas station from 10 p.m. until midnight. She didn't go anywhere near my house until I told her the address. Harrison looked at the screen, said nothing. And here's the temp agency record. She was scheduled for a shift that night, $12 an hour. She skipped it. If she was planning to steal $200,000, why would she also give up a $12 shift she needed to eat? Eleanor paused. She'd laid out the facts. But facts weren't what Harrison needed to hear. "She found my bag with $200,000. She called me. She drove 40 minutes across the city in the rain. She sat on my kitchen floor at 2 a.m. while I cried about losing my house. She hadn't eaten all day. She didn't tell me. She didn't ask who I was. She didn't ask about you." Her voice cracked. "She just stayed." Eleanor wiped her eyes. She wasn't done. And then she came back. Every week. She helped Lily with her homework. She bought her a notebook with her own money. My daughter smiles again because of her. Lily asks about her every single day. She looked at Harrison. "That girl gave me back my home. She gave Lily back her laugh. And she gave me a reason to call you for the first time in 6 years. And your people threw her out of a building because a police officer couldn't be bothered to fill out a form correctly." The room was silent. Harrison sat very still. His hands were folded on the desk. His jaw was tight. He didn't ask questions. He didn't challenge the evidence. He'd heard enough. Not from the voicemail or the GPS or the records. From his granddaughter's voice. Then he picked up the phone and called Thomas Wren. "Bring Brianna back. Now." The emergency board meeting was called for 10 a.m. the following morning. Derek Ashton arrived early. He always did. He sat at his usual seat, second from the head of the table, left side, with a leather folder in front of him. Inside, the police report, Brianna's employment file, a printed summary of his findings. Clean, organized, airtight. He wasn't nervous. He'd done this before. He'd protected this company for 20 years. This was just another case. Patricia Coleman and Richard Graves arrived next. Then the legal counsel. Then 3 more board members who'd been briefed overnight. Coffee was poured. Chairs were adjusted. The room settled into the kind of silence that precedes a verdict. At 10:02, the door opened. Harrison Caldwell walked in. Behind him, Eleanor. And behind Eleanor, Brianna Foster. Derek's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Brianna looked different than the last time she'd been in this room. Not better dressed, not more confident, just still. The kind of stillness that comes from having nothing left to lose. Harrison didn't sit down. He stood at the head of the table, leaned on his cane, and looked at every person in the room, one by one. Then he placed a phone on the table. "This is a voicemail left by Ms. Foster on my granddaughter's phone at 11:48 p.m., 2 hours before anyone knew the bag was missing." He pressed play. Brianna's voice, small and steady, filled the boardroom. "I found something that belongs to you. I'll keep it safe." The room didn't move. This is her GPS record from that night. Her phone was at the gas station from 10 p.m. onward. She didn't travel to my granddaughter's home until she was given the address by my granddaughter during the phone call she initiated. He swiped to the next screen. This is the temp agency's employment log. Ms. Foster was scheduled for a $12 an hour shift that evening. She didn't show up because she was driving across the city in the rain to return a bag with $200,000 in it. Harrison set the phone down, looked at Derek. The police report your investigation relied on was filed by an officer who couldn't be bothered to document what actually happened. There was no theft. There was no scheme. There was a young woman who found a bag, called the owner, and drove it to her house at midnight. He paused. But she didn't stop there. Harrison's voice changed. It got quieter, which made it louder. She sat on my granddaughter's kitchen floor until 2 in the morning. My granddaughter, a woman she'd never met, was falling apart, losing her home, alone with her daughter in the dark. And this girl, who hadn't eaten all day, who had $14 in her bank account, who sleeps in her car, she sat down on the floor next to a stranger and stayed until morning. Then she drove her to the bank. Then she came back every week to help her daughter with homework. He looked at Brianna, then back at the room. A girl with no home saved someone else's home, and none of you thought to ask her what happened before you took her badge. The room was dead silent. Then Harrison said it, the words that would stay with everyone in that room for the rest of their careers. Integrity is what you do when nobody's watching. He let it land. This young woman had $200,000 in her hands. She was hungry. She was homeless. Nobody would have known. And she gave it back. That is more integrity than this room has seen in a decade. Harrison turned to Brianna. He spoke directly to her now, not to the board, not to Derek, not for the room's benefit, just to her. Ms. Foster, I apologize. On behalf of this company and everyone in this room, what was done to you was wrong. No one spoke. No one moved. Patricia Coleman was looking at the table. Richard Graves was looking at his hands. The legal counsel closed her folder. Harrison straightened up. Ms. Foster's suspension is lifted, effective immediately. Her record is clean. If anyone in this room has an objection, now is the time. No one objected. Brianna stood near the door the entire time. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. When Harrison said her name, she looked up. Not with triumph, not with relief, just with the quiet steadiness of someone who never expected to be defended and didn't quite know what to do with it. Eleanor reached over and took her hand. Brianna let her. Derek Ashton sat in his chair for a long time after the others filed out. He didn't leave with the board members. He didn't pack up his folder. He just sat there, looking at the empty seat where Brianna had been. 20 years. 20 years of protecting this company by assuming the worst about people. And for 20 years, he'd been right. Every time, every fraud, every con, every person who came through that door wanting something. Until now, he'd been wrong about Brianna Foster. Not because the evidence fooled him. The evidence was genuinely ambiguous. He'd been wrong because he couldn't imagine that someone with nothing would give back everything without wanting something in return. That failure wasn't professional. It was personal. Harrison didn't fire him, didn't reprimand him publicly, didn't need to. After the room cleared, Harrison stopped at Derek's chair, looked down at him. You've spent 20 years in this building, Derek, and you still don't understand that some people are just good. Derek didn't argue, didn't explain. He just nodded. Once. Slowly. It was the smallest gesture, but it was the truest thing he'd done in 20 years. Later that afternoon, Brianna passed Derek in the hallway. He was carrying his folder. She was carrying her badge, the new one, freshly printed. They stopped. Neither spoke. Derek looked at her for a moment. Then he said something he hadn't said to anyone in a very long time. I'm sorry. Brianna looked at him. She didn't smile. She didn't say, it's okay. She just nodded, the same way he had. Then she walked away, and Derek watched her go. He stood in that hallway for a while. Then he closed the folder and walked back to his office. That same week, Harrison's legal team contacted the precinct. Officer Brennan's report was flagged for review. The intake log, individual presented at precinct in possession of leather bag containing large sum of cash, was compared against the voicemail timestamp, the GPS record, and Eleanor's testimony. The discrepancy was clear. Brennan hadn't lied. He'd been lazy, careless. The kind of careless that ruins lives when the wrong person depends on your paperwork. Internal Affairs opened a review. Not for corruption, for negligence. The system had failed Brianna Foster, not with malice, but with indifference. And that indifference was now on the record. It wouldn't change what happened in that conference room, but it would be documented. And sometimes that's what justice looks like. Not a dramatic reversal, but a quiet correction that says, this mattered. She mattered. That afternoon, Harrison asked Brianna to come to his study. Just the two of them. The room looked different than the first time she'd been there. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe she was the one who was different. Harrison sat behind his desk. He didn't pour coffee this time. He just looked at her. I'm not going to offer you money, he said, and I'm not going to promote you. That's not what this is. Brianna waited. The Caldwell Foundation funds scholarships. Has for 30 years. Full ride. Any university, any program. Tuition, housing, books, living expenses, all of it. He slid a folder across the desk. This one has your name on it. Brianna looked at the folder. She didn't open it. You said you didn't want a handout. This isn't one. You earned this. She picked it up, held it in her lap. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. Thank you. Harrison nodded. I'm helping Eleanor and Lily, paying off the rest of the debt, making sure they're stable. Eleanor doesn't know yet. Brianna looked at him. You should tell her yourself. She's been waiting for that call for 6 years. Harrison didn't say anything for a moment. Then he smiled. Small, barely there, but real. The first smile she'd seen from him. When did you get so wise, Miss Foster? I'm not wise. I just pay attention. She stood up, shook his hand, walked to the door. Then she stopped and turned around. Mr. Caldwell? Yes? The apartment, the job, the scholarship. I'm grateful. But you should know, the thing that changed my life wasn't any of that. What was it? Someone answered the phone when I called. That's all it took. She left. Harrison sat alone in his study for a long time after that. Brianna drove to the shelter that evening, walked into the kitchen. Phyllis was at the stove, stirring something that smelled like home. "Hey, baby, how was today?" Brianna told her. All of it. The board meeting, Harrison's speech, the scholarship, everything. Phyllis listened, wiped her hands on her apron, and then she laughed. Not a small laugh, the kind that fills a kitchen and bounces off the walls and makes everyone in the room turn around and smile. "I told you. You already knew what was right." Brianna reached into her bag and pulled out the old notebook. Over 40 applications, over 40 silences. She held it for a moment. Then she walked to her car and put it in the glove compartment. "You're not throwing it away?" Phyllis asked from the doorway. "No, I'm keeping it, so I remember where I started." Phyllis smiled. "That's my girl." 6 months later, a dorm room, evening. Books on the desk, a cup of coffee gone cold. Brianna sat by the window, phone to her ear. Same call, every night, without fail. "What'd you learn today, baby?" "Econ. The professor talks too fast, but I'm keeping up. And there's free coffee in the library." "You told me. Twice." "It's really good coffee, Phyllis." Phyllis laughed. The warm kind. The kind that sounds like a kitchen. Brianna's phone buzzed. A text from Lily. A photo. Eleanor and Lily in front of their house. Lily holding up a report card. Caption. "Bree, straight A's. You started this." Brianna smiled. Phyllis was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Baby, you know what makes me proudest? It's not the scholarship. It's not the briefcase. It's that you still call me every night." Brianna didn't say anything. She just smiled. And that was the last scene. Brianna Foster found $200,000 in the rain and gave it back. But the thing she never lost was who she was. Yo, integrity isn't about what you do when people are watching. It's about who you are when nobody's there. Being broke doesn't mean being broken. Your character? That's the one thing nobody can take from you. Remember that. Yo, integrity isn't about what you do when people are watching. It's about who you are when nobody's there. Being broke doesn't mean being broken. Your character? That's the one thing nobody can take from you. Remember that.